Hey, let's get started.
Let's get started then.
I know there's a song that says that. I can't sing. So.
I can't sing and I don't know that song, so it would all be you. I guess welcome everybody to our committee. We're going to start with an invocation, thought, and pledge of allegiance, or pledge of invocation or thought and pledge of allegiance. And I was going to have that out, but I didn't. So I thought I'm just going to give you a thought that I have. I just wanted to thank everybody for volunteering and helping with this committee. I think community involvement is really huge in cities, and I think it helps to make our community better. And so I just wanted to thank you all for volunteering and coming and being here, being a part of this process.
Thank you for being on the lead role.
We'll see how that
Being
goes.
brave enough to step
Yeah,
up.
no, we'll see how that goes. If you all want to stand with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I think we should start with minutes from last. That's not on here. Can we still just discuss that?
Yeah.
We have the minutes. Does anybody have any changes? I heard Doug was maybe mentioning something.
Yes, I requested that I'm gonna call it a title. On the list that was put out of, this committee. It says, if I remember right, it says team member / consultant. And I believe the correct name for what Brenda and I are is simply consultant, and I respectfully requested that be changed
All
to
right.
reflect more accurately what our position really is. Thank you.
Okay, we've got that noted. Did everybody get a chance to look at the budget? I know that we're gonna be discussing the upcoming budget, but just to look through the 30 pages, 40 pages, 50 pages. It's a big budget. Yeah.
Before we get too rolling too fast, Susan was the secretary or minute taker.
Oh, yeah, you've got some things.
Do you want me to? I mean, I think unless there's a volunteer, I don't mind doing the minutes because.
So Susan, and who else? I heard there's a few others, so I need to, yeah, sorry, I just went right to number one.
I put it with something that kind of popped in there. I obviously need to make sure somebody take minutes so we don't get too thrown up. But
Okay,
Do we have members that are not coming anymore, or what's happening?
yeah, so you saw Susan.
I saw Susan.
Yep, Christy Pack, similar situation, not a job, but she's
It's tax season.
Well, that too, but she still was gonna work on it and help. But there was some other secondary thing on base that she was gonna take charge of. And it was being like a honorary commander or something, but there's like a,
Oh,
like
is she taking over Jenny's role as like the citizen liaison thing?
possibly.
Gold Star, yeah, there's, okay.
So there's that, and then Bradley basically just took on a full-time job, so I.
Oh, so
Aren't you
Brad,
supposed to be retired?
so Brad's gone too.
He told me he was gonna retire. He retired.
Brad doesn't know how to read.
He doesn't retire, yes. So,
He'll be applying for a job as he takes his last.
I got
job.
after him with his wife there.
Yeah.
Come on.
so. I asked Brenda, she's like, yeah, sure, I can be a more active role. Doug,
You'll be sorry.
I know, but
I won't be sorry.
Doug knows the amount of work this is, he's gonna stay a consultant, which I. Just fine by me, so I think that's kind of the result of everything, and so. Really what I see is that we just have to replace Susan as a minute taker and. If there's no volunteers, I can just cover that.
So then we're missing Chris.
Chris
McIntyre.
McIntyre should be here, but
Yeah.
he has a weird job too.
Yeah.
Depending on-
Okay, and I've got Kyle, your phone number's been added, and Brenda, your phone number's been added. Did anybody have any other changes? I noticed it was saying there was an email that was pinging back. Was that Chris?
Yeah, it was just that it was an I stripped off in front of it, so
Okay,
Ryan fixed that.
okay, so,
So Christie is not. We can cross her off.
She's good tax lady. from what I understand.
She's the best I've ever used.
Yeah.
She's really amazing.
And then Brad,
Right. I mean,
do we need to get some more people?
Debated that. It's one of those things that we've gone a little bit too far, in my opinion, with the training and some of the other stuff. And I don't know, I asked the mayor and he said, if you're fine with Doug and Brenda, I'm fine. And I think if you get too far along, you have too many voices. I don't know.
My opinion,
Yes.
it's been offered, they haven't volunteered, or I left.
How do you really feel?
How do I really feel?
Just in case we weren't clear.
No, I wouldn't have volunteered had my sister not told me about it, so.
And yeah.
And
there was
I didn't think
Put it
it's
out
not
there.
knowing about.
Yeah.
one person that Brian mentioned, and I'll have to get back. She said, somebody else, and I was like, I've heard of them. So, and they weren't in any.
Not everybody goes out to the Norfolk and
Was it you?
side.
No,
Oh,
you're better off with the not number though.
I think this intro would be great.
The North Park.
Well, Chris McIntyre is still
There
there.
you go. That's what I mean, he would make 7.
You got 6 now.
6.
1, 2, 3, 4. You're not remembering who you're
Oh,
on. It is
oh, oh,
on,
oh,
right, Chris?
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm pointing at the blank person there. So there's 6 people. Yeah, exactly.
Well, we've got
But
7.
Chris could be the tiebreaker if necessary.
Or Doug can do
I could be, that's why I break a tie. I got plenty of time.
I also don't see voting too much.
No, I
This is more discussion.
think we had like 1 or 2.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not too worried about any voting.
Okay,
All right,
sorry.
so we will get back to just the budgets.
Which is enough.
So I'm guessing, I think if anybody has any questions on how, just by looking at the last budget, how the budget process is, based on what we heard last time, now's the time to ask those questions, I think, so that we kind of understand where we're going moving forward. We all good?
The one thing I had, and I think I answered myself, was that each year we're spending about 600K in interest against the building, city building. Is that a correct statement?
It's principal and interest,
Right, but I'm saying it goes towards the payoff of it.
right? Yeah.
What's that?
You said principal and how much is it? I think
It depends. That's the answer. It's like 0.5, 0.1, I mean, not 0.1, 1 point something. It's in the financial somewhere in there.
just 500. It sounded scary.
Well, that's the
But
crazy
it's
part
not
is,
principal and interest.
yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
that's okay. I was thinking more about the process and if anybody had any questions based on the process, how the budget in the city is done, what our part is gonna be in that process.
Yeah, is there a certain area that we need to take a look at? Or,
Well-
because there may be some that there's just no change.
Okay, so how I see that, we'll work out our schedule, and is what we'll do is we're gonna follow along with how the city has their discussions, their budget discussions, and we'll discuss each department and have the department head kind of go over where their funding is and how they're doing it with our committee before the council discusses it. Okay, so then at the next council meeting, that department will be presenting their budget to the council. And we'll have already been able to maybe go over it and have some input at that point that Chris can share in that discussion.
Does everybody on the committee have this document?
Right now.
Which one are you? Yeah.
This came from the council meeting here, since the beginning of the year. This is one of the attachments. And it outlines the coming council's
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah,
I
it's
think-
in this.
It's helpful for all of us if we've got that.
It was emailed to us.
Okay.
2024,
25 budget schedule.
Yes, and I think we'll go through that as we get down to the end here when we do our schedule, we'll work it out. And I also think it would be, we can decide then if we wanna maybe put someone from each committee over the department as a specialist, or if, if there's any other extra questions or things, we can have them find that information out. Sound good? All right, so I think it's important as we get into this, to set our goals, to figure out what it is we're doing, what our role is, and I don't know if you were able to find anything. I asked John to look up when this committee was put together last year, kind of what the goals were given to the committee as it was put together. What was the important things that the council was looking for from this committee? What kind of, so that our discussions are really centered around things that will be of use to the council, so that we're not discussing things that we have no say in, that it really, do you know what I'm, yes?
So to answer your question, I think last year it was to literally deep dive. And that was to go through and what they call yellow sheets and look at literally. And I mean, we got into the weeds, that there was, I mean, and Doug can attest to this, is that we even looked at, should the city print out these colorful
Yes.
agendas? I mean, or
So
should,
is
you know,
that,
so that, I mean, that's how deep that they got. And I don't, it's not in the weeds per se, but it was a deep dive. And so detailed, but
Okay.
it was down to the nth degree. And the thing that I foresee, I don't want to replicate that per se. At the same time, there needs to be understanding in the details, like you said, of each year's budget. And if, I don't disagree with talking to each department head, but at the same time, there needs to be an extra little shove in there about
yeah,
what big projects for the future, because really, if we need to get away from planning year to year, to looking out a few more years to say, hey, in our opinions, and it's gonna be our opinions, obviously, you guys, is that what do we need to be focused on? What are black holes? Like I said, that's, to be honest, I was
Okay.
funny, but there's certain things that I think each citizen has. I mean, even the mayor said the other day, the swimming pool, there's many, everything's an option, get to, if it doesn't get to not being in the, getting it to the black, then, maybe private, all the
Yeah.
little things, bulldozing,
So-
so,
I don't know that we have necessarily. I don't know that, I don't know that it's our job to tell council how to prioritize
no, I'm not talking about.
or to pick projects over. So I just want to make sure that we're understanding that, because I know what the budget did, what the committee did last year, and I don't think we need to replicate that. I think you guys did a great deep dive. I learned a lot from listening, so that's why I asked, so what was this put together? What was it that council expected? Brenda?
Well, on the first email we got, it says 2024 Citizen Budget Subcommittee Charter. Mission, explore and recommend to the city council options for cost savings in the current budget year and in the next several years. Review planning for growth in the next 5 years and provide any feedback to the city council. Ensure any findings, plans are explained in a simple, basic manner to the general citizenry of North Lottie.
Yes, and that was, I think that was put together by Chris at the
Yeah.
last meeting, so I just,
Well, we just-
and I think it's great. I just was trying to find out the.
February 7th.
I was pretty heavily involved in the creation of the committee. And I don't think there are two concerns that I have. One, no committee is ever created and said, now you tell us what you're gonna do. Right? Committees are created to do specific things, and the Citizen Budget Committee was created to review the proposed budget and look for, as Councilmember Culver has said, to look for expenditures that maybe ought not to be, and those kinds of things. This committee was never chartered, and I don't think it's appropriate for us to take on ourselves without being given the direction to do so, to look at charting 5 years down the road, to look at capital projects and their prioritization, infrastructure and its prioritization. That is not what this committee was established to do. And I don't think it's within our our purview to simply say that we're going to just simply start doing that.
I mean, I agree. I don't, as I was thinking about it, I don't know how those discussions would work. I know that our capital projects, each capital project falls within a department. So we'll also be talking about them as they're, within those departments and how they fall into the budget of that specific department.
I don't think I am gonna be of much benefit if I don't have something coming from the department heads
Yes,
explaining what their budgets are so that I can understand what it is they're trying to do with their
The
budget.
yellow sheets.
yes, and I agree. I think that we should have, each department present to us, kind of their budget and we overlook it. I don't know that we need to be deep diving and figuring out necessarily
No.
how to be saving money here and there. I think we need to be looking at it as an overview, finding out,
But you can look at high dollar areas,
yes,
maybe you have a criteria and say, this is the dollar area we're gonna look at. I mean, you're not gonna save much by looking at the smaller items, so maybe look at the high dollar areas and of the budget and say, is there areas we can,
yeah, I agree.
I don't know.
Do we
Anybody?
have any influence on priorities of budgets for the different departments? Because I know some, like if we dump money into one department versus another versus taking into consideration their priorities. All right, just an idea.
I think as the committee did well last year, I think the committee can make comment,
Sure.
right? And,
Comments.
what's that?
I'm really good at making
I
comments.
know you are, and that's why I'm glad you're here. Get somebody else besides me that it can make comment. I heard it said that this committee is just above making public comments. And I think, because we are a subcommittee of another committee, right? This is a subcommittee of the audit committee that's chaired by Randy Wynn, who is the liaison and the chair that then, so we kind of report to the audit committee and then the audit committee goes to council. At least that's how this committee was set up and hasn't changed that I'm aware of. But as the council member over finance last year, the enormous value of this committee was the multiple sets of eyes on every department and the expenditures that they were proposing for the coming year. The current budget is already approved by council. It's already in place. We're not going to change that budget, but the current budget, the proposed budgets, that's where at least the committee last year was invaluable. They provided lots of feedback and good feedback on things for council to consider and to look at that in some cases council didn't itself come up with. So
So do we have a copy of the proposed?
we don't have that.
That's
That's
why
correct.
we'll kind of review it with each department head before it's presented to the council. So each department will present it to the council and say, this is our proposed budget from this department. These are some increases and needs that we have. This is where, so they'll break it down and they'll present that to us before it goes to the council. And we'll be able to have some feedback there.
But until that time, is there not a way that we can just go over the current budget to familiarize ourselves?
Yeah, and that's, I think
With
that's
all of that, I think that's something I would feel more comfortable if I could see what the budget looks like, and then if I have questions or something, put some little notes, so that when the new budget comes
Yes.
out.
I think that's, a great start. Bill, I thought I printed off that paper with I did, huh? So March 20th, this is the budget plan for the council. And they don't really start into it until March 26th.
Right.
So we've got one. Okay.
So do we have budget versus actual at all? So if we've got that, we can still, even while they're preparing, look and see how the actuals are coming along to the budget, and then when they come in with their budget, we'll at least have an idea.
Mhm.
You know, and then if they've got something that's coming in a little bit higher than what the actuals have been in the past, it's a good place to start looking
Yeah, for
for.
sure.
You have it through September, do you have it through, or, yeah, do you have it through December yet? What's that?
With the audit committee to go next month.
Okay, so what we have currently is, published, what, December, right? So it's through September, and that kind of shows where they're at.
And I did email a link to the city, so it's the current one with the audit that goes with it.
And we're looking at the right
Would
one.
would it be helpful for new members, councilman, if you demonstrated with some of the yellow sheets from last year, kind of the process that went through to familiarize how we're looking, because not everybody will know how to read the yellow sheets or what it's saying. And I knew you'd have them.
Yeah, I think that would be great too.
I think that would be, even for me, a review of those yellow sheets, if you could, if maybe in a future meeting before the 26th of March, when those proposed budgets start hitting, if we could have some training on how to read those yellow sheets and understanding that what's the delay in revenues, Jamie?
2 months.
Okay.
Several months behind, right? So we're in February now, and do we have December's sales tax yet? So we just got December sales tax. So Cindy, when we're looking at current expenditures,
Yeah, you're gonna have a lot.
it can look off like we're
Yes.
overexpending because
You've
the
always got
revenue.
that.
Yeah, it's stupid. I wish there was
It's
a way around it.
there's no way to flatline a budget.
Oh, we can flatline it, all right.
The one thing that you'll see
Compared to action.
is that you never really notice until you start looking at it, but on the budget on the our left-hand side is these numbers,
Mhm.
and they never change. So
Account
if
numbers.
it's an expenditure for
Yeah.
salaries for the stormwater utility fund, it's always gonna be 53, 40,
Yeah.
110. And so that's the thing with the yellow sheets. Son of a gun, it has those 3 codes on it, and so it'll translate that back into the budget. Probably how Jamie keeps sort of saying, anyway, it's through those numbers, but anyways, but each year, yeah, they go through and haggle, lack of a better word, what they're gonna do for telephone service, or, how many, somebody broke the printer because they jammed their, I'm making up stuff, but the bottom line is that they have, and there's a lot of info in there. So I don't know, the yellow sheet completion comes in smiley face.
I don't even have them.
So we've got one meeting, on March 6th, which is gonna be one ahead of, or 2 ahead of this next one. What if next meeting, we just plan on a presentation on the yellow sheets and kind of how the last committee worked? And then that we can all look through the current budget just to get an idea, familiarize ourselves with it. And even,
Yeah,
and then so that can kind of be what we work on next meeting so that we understand that. So, and I think we'll finish planning out our calendar, excuse me, as we get down a little bit further. Number 3, some of the ideas that I had putting this in here is so that we know, okay, so that we kind of have an idea of how we should be discussing budgets and when we're coming in, what it is we're at and what we're looking for and how we're discussing them to be able to give any kind of feedback to council that is within our committee's, responsibility. And that's where I put, what are we doing? What should we be doing? So as we look at the budgets, these are some of the things I think we can be looking at to understand and be helpful to the city and the department as we're budgeting. What are we doing? What should we be doing? And we've got do we need to prioritize capital projects? I think that can be discussions within each committee or each department. Because there's capital projects, but they each fall under a department.
But those capital projects are usually approved in advance and go out many years, right?
Yeah, I don't know how we
I
can,
don't know how, you would maybe want to look at the new capital projects, but the ones that are existing are already in
that's
place.
kind of how I felt. I wasn't quite sure. I'm not sure how to approach that kind of a discussion. And I also, I personally feel like there's certain things that I'm comfortable discussing. I'm not an elected official, so I don't want to be making decisions that, I
But we
think.
don't have to make a decision.
Or
We
have
can
a-
make a
you know what I'm
recommendation,
saying? I know,
take
but
it
I
or
just-
leave it.
I just
One
think
thing
it's.
you would understand is a plan, right? You don't necessarily have a specific plan in place, but you know you're gonna spend $3 million out in whatever land, out farther than you can actually have on. It's
Right.
specifically planned. So to me, that's kind of what we're doing. And it's a guess as to where we're gonna do. Some of the things that are kind of a little bit more than a guess are the fact that you can get certain road money. And so the widening of Washington is pretty close. And but some of the other stuff is like, well, we might change this out in this year, so it's, when you ask the department head stuff, but to me, it is still a plan, unless it's in the budget, it's not hard. And so, hard plan. So to me, it is something that we can discuss because it's not in the budget. So, honestly, is there a better plan to,
So you're saying then any capital improvements are not pre-approved? And
The capital
already planned?
well, if they're in here and they're budgeted for this current year, then yeah. But if they're not for 25 or 26, 27, 20, no, there's no. John can yell at, he hasn't yelled at me yet, but I'm assuming.
He's sleeping over there. I saw
That's
his eyes
just, he
closed.
just fakes it.
Yeah.
I think that every council meeting.
He hides behind the screen.
And then he pops up with an answer and I'm like, oh.
Well, I would like to go into the expenses first. And understand them, and then we can look at the plans, because the plans are gonna be your 5-year and greater.
Yeah.
But I'd like to look what's in the budget now.
Yeah, and I
What-
think
how much
that's
we get
where
in
we're,
I'm sorry, I had to step out.
We're talking about capital.
yeah,
So
just,
again, I think that's, and I know I'm flogging a dead horse here. But that's not within our purview. We haven't been tasked with that. The committee wasn't given that assignment last year. And the assignment, to my knowledge, hasn't been changed for this year.
Well, we can change the tack a little bit, because I didn't want to copy and paste what we did last.
No,
year.
with all respect, the committee doesn't get to decide what it gets to do.
Didn't say that.
It's assigned. And so since a 5-year plan was not part of this committee's development and initial charter, that hasn't changed. And so for us to say, we're just gonna go look at, and we're gonna start looking at a 5-year plan. That's the committee telling the council and mayor what it is we're gonna do instead of what it's supposed to be.
I'll get approval for that, because that's.
Well, I already talked to the mayor about it and it's not our job.
Okay.
It's that clear.
I was gonna say, okay, so Doug, what did you want to say?
Mr. Swanson.
Yeah.
Is there a written statement of what the subcommittee is supposed to do? We got the charter that you're talking about, that job, is that in writing already?
We're gonna, I think, I'm hoping that, John, are you still looking for me?
I emailed it to you.
Oh. Okay,
You want me to put it on the screen?
yes, that'd be great. From the conception of this committee, I think that's where I was trying to look back to.
So this is November of 22. These are the meeting minutes. In the discussion about adding this resident-led subcommittee. And then I think that the most important part of the discussion is this from here kind of to the end of this paragraph. So
Okay, Councilmember Delpas stated that in past discussions of creation of the proposed committee, comments have been made about the need to record the discussions. Okay, given that the committee will be making recommendations on the city's finances, he feels it would be appropriate to create them as official committee meetings. Mayor Ruby states he agrees that would be appropriate, and he feels it improves the transparency of the city. All right, where is it telling what it's just talking about? It should be official. Mayor Ruby added that the council can define the parameters for the subcommittee, which can be commissioned to department heads and the members of the subcommittee. He asked Councilmember Swanson to handle recruitment of subcommittee members and report back to council regarding membership. Councilmember Swanson stated he'll begin working to that, and he added he will work with the city's financial staff to create a document including information regarding the budget process and municipal building authority. Municipal budgeting authority to provide the subcommittee.
So it wasn't super clear in the minutes of the meeting, and I don't remember the discussion very well.
All right. I
So
will do
why
a
was-
deep dive and
Why
listen.
was this committee created?
It was created, if I can remember, there was Doug, who came in after the, budget had been
Truth and taxation
approved,
hearing.
the truth and taxation hearing. And he came in, he'd been going over the budget with some neighbors and friends with some concerns.
Keep going, you're getting close.
And I think it kind of was born out of that, out of wanting, I know that he had come in with
That
some,
sounds like to me that we should be looking at budget.
That's all, but
yes.
when we, not.
Oh, I was just gonna make a suggestion that maybe, our council member talks to the mayor or the city council and finds out what direction they want to go and give us direction they want us to go.
I think that's a good
and then
idea,
Give us.
because I'm getting a lot of,
An outline.
I've got an idea of what I want. Yeah, so this was from last meeting. I know that it was written up, and so we can follow that. But in talking to the mayor, he had some different ideas as well to me.
To add on to it.
Mhm. And so that's where I was,
It's just that.
yeah, the charter, and that's what Brenda had read. And so I just, for me, I'm just trying to be real clear so that our discussions are really focused and
Appropriate.
appropriate for what we're doing, because I know that I heard everyone's introductions last time, and so I know that time is valuable, and so I want to make sure that we are being effective and that we're not just talking about things to feel good. Sometimes that's nice, but it doesn't get a lot done, so
Okay.
that's kind of what I'm looking at. Some suggestions or some wording that, I had written down based on some discussions in trying to narrow it down. Review proposed budget, review departmental expenditures looking for efficiency gain. Suggest critical, if I could even read my own writings, critical expenditures not currently budgeted.
That's why I'm not a secretary.
Honestly. So I think going over each department budget as they're getting ready to prepare it, and we're looking over it, and if we can see anywhere where the city maybe isn't doing something that they should be doing, or is there somewhere that department can improve that we see, maybe they could be more efficient here based on the presentation that was given to us. I think within the department, if we see something maybe, I think it's okay to say to the council and the department, we maybe feel like this should be a bigger role within your department. We're just kind of overlooking the budget. We're reviewing it. We're finding out where the city can do better, where there may be some places that we can help as eight new sets of eyes to say, hey, we think that you could be more efficient in this area, and this is how we believe that you could be. And that's kind of what we've got here, how the city could better utilize funds, are they doing something wrong that we think they could improve on in each department? What are we doing that shouldn't be doing? Is there something that we're doing that necessarily isn't, that we don't think is needed, that maybe not seeing the return that, it's worth? What infrastructure issues should the city tackle first? Chris, that was your suggestion. I'm not sure.
Which one?
The infrastructure, I'm not,
Oh, there's a lot of little things that are going on that, is there. The way that, if you look at the out years, a lot of it has to do with. How you take when I have to say infrastructure, water, sewer, all of the stuff that has to happen. One of the thoughts in my back of my head was the water meter, that's coming, all these little things that have to happen. One of the things the sewer guys are doing is, lining that.
yeah,
Extend the life, and so one of the things is like, well, what else, is there something that the city is missing, is.
and do you think that that's a discussion outside of the Department of Public Works? Cause my personal concern with that is I don't understand what's going on in the city in those areas enough that I would be comfortable saying, I think you should do this project first.
Correct, what I'm saying is that if there's something out there that is, I don't know, that hasn't happened yet, and how are you gonna handle this? Because this is, I'm making up numbers, this is gonna cost $10 million, how are you gonna somehow do that over the next 5 years? If there's something that they know, there's a big thing coming, how is that gonna be handled? I mean, those type of things can be asked.
Yeah,
That says we can't.
no, I know that. I don't, no, I understand what you're saying. Okay. So I guess we'll just cross that as Public Works is.
Yeah.
Is doing that, is giving a presentation if anyone has any questions about something within the city infrastructure. That they can
There's a
see,
lot
they
of-
can,
I mean, to me, and this, trying to speak in maybe city language too, is there's a lot of set asides that you have sitting there waiting for fallout money, that at the end of the fiscal year, each year the government will say, somebody hasn't spent all their money. Are you ready to spend it? And you're like, heck yeah, I have all these projects ready to go.
That
That's,
should be submitted with a budget then, that should be.
Well,
Well,
but they're-
and if they've got additional things, other scope that they want to do, it
right,
would be good to know what that is, so we can see if maybe they could.
big, that's what I'm talking about. It's the
Yeah,
fact
but that needs to be communicated in with it.
But that's not gonna be in here because that's all in somebody's head, because
Then
that's,
we should probably ask for that. Cause I don't know what that is.
right.
So if there's
I
additional
don't
scope
know
that's not
either,
covered in the
so
budget
there's-
that they would like to see done, it would be nice to know what that scope is.
Like sidewalks,
Yes.
the city needs sidewalks.
Yeah, and there's little scope in there for certain things, like, one of the things that I said priority wise was 1,700, because that's, people need to cross that or get to the school. That's right there. Right?
And you talk about the Washington Road expansion, I don't even know anything about that, so.
Well, yeah, it's gonna continue up the hill. So I mean, there's little things
Yeah.
like that.
I think one of the things to consider though is that North Ogden budget is not a use it or lose it system.
Yeah.
Like the federal system is, we're nothing like that. And we've never had, if we've got a set aside that's building for X project. At the end of the year, just because that project didn't happen, we don't look at those funds and try to shift it somewhere else. Because that set aside, the meters, the few number of years ago when we had, that was a fun time, John.
Yes, it
When we
was.
had 1,700 meters that suddenly went out. I mean, it was a near $500,000 expenditure that we had not expected. And now there are systems in place and money being set aside so that as meters need to be replaced in the future, the money is there. That money isn't all expended every year. And we certainly wouldn't want to take that and say, well, we didn't expend all the set aside for the meters this year. So we're going to see, is there 1,700 or Washington going on up the hill or whatever, some other project that we want to shift that money to. I mean, council will budget however council wants to budget, but to this point, North Ogden has not been a use it or lose it under that kind of a budgeting system.
And I don't know that I'm really saying use it or lose it, I'm just saying if there is a potential for something to come, that's big. Maybe we shorten our budget a little bit for a few years until we get to that point. Because we might need to have,
Well, I think you see, there's a lot of that that's already in the
Yeah.
budget.
And that's good to see.
But there might be a,
Planning for future growth, like police department. That's not something that's ethereal, or that is something, it's not anything in here that says, hey, we're gonna have an extra policeman every other year.
But I still think the first place to start is in the budget and look and see how that's going.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be
At
able
the
to
same time, you're gonna say,
have these discussions as the departments each come, because
They're good questions to ask.
yes, and so I think it's really good for us to get an idea, so as we start in these discussions, we're all on the same page, looking for the same
I mean,
things,
the
and
mayor said it last time. They kicked the can down the road so many times, so that's one of the things I circled. What are we missing? What cans are we kicking down the road right now that nobody wants to talk about?
okay.
I'm writing that down.
No.
the big can that mayor refers to when he says that most of the time is raising taxes. Didn't happen for 30 years. Even though the cost of everything was going up, even though we had more things that we needed, nobody was willing to say, we have got to have more revenue. And we kind of got, we got drunk on sales tax. And we went from it being kind of a 50-50 split to now it's a 66, 33, 70, 30 split. Where our property taxes doesn't even cover, it covers barely half of our police department. Everything else is sales tax, and you know the volatility of sales tax. That just ask Riverdale. Right, they're having. It's,
I feel so sorry for Riverdale losing their sales tax revenue. I do, I feel so sorry.
well, RC Willie.
Not at all.
RC Willie, when they left, 900,000 a year.
Yeah.
In sales tax revenue to Riverdale. Imagine having $1 million yanked out of your budget. It's
I think one thing we could incorporate in our discussing too is how they're looking at possibly implementing the transportation utility fee again. And if that's, I don't know, is that something we could discuss? As we go forward and look at budgets, I know that that's been discussed, just, it's something I think we should keep in mind that has been kind of thrown around, because we did have one. And whether or not the city would benefit from implementing that again, and if so, that may be something. Chris, maybe you could find out if that would be something that would be okay for us to talk about as far as we're looking forward on the budget. Brenda?
I think you can discuss anything you want to, and you make a recommendation to the city council, and they will decide what they want to do. We're not telling them anything, we're not demanding anything, we're not making any policy, we're just saying, hey, we understand that you're thinking about this transportation thing. This is where we would suggest it to be used, and we leave it at that. If they do it, we
I don't
have
think
ourselves
we
some
can,
back.
I
If we
think
don't, we don't.
I think that it has to go to a certain place, it has to go to roads. And so we can't, that it's just a matter of if, as that budget is, as we're watching that budget, if we think that that's something that the city could benefit from implementing again,
Yeah, well,
based on the budget and the discussion from Public Works.
John will tell you if it has to go to a specific place, if we can make the recommendation. But I hate to see, part of what I see is going on here is, instead of just having open budget discussion, already we're limiting ourselves. Well, we don't want to talk about this. We don't want to talk about this. I'm saying, put it all out there. And if the question comes up, then let's talk about it and see what recommendation comes up. If there's not enough interest to talk about that, then we don't talk about it.
Okay,
I don't want to see it limited on what we can.
and I don't know that I'm trying to limit so much as guide and say, okay, this is where I think we can be really beneficial and most effective if we come knowing that this is how we discuss it. Especially where not everyone is familiar with the budget or the budgeting process, we could start asking a lot of questions that might just, so that's, I'm not trying
That's where I
to.
disagree with a little bit with Chris, because, coming from where I was to this budget committee, I needed the budget background.
Yeah,
I liked that each department came, they brought up things, we brought up questions.
Mhm.
This committee will bring up different questions than last year's committee. But in order to know how they feel about things and what to ask, they have to know what the budget is.
Yeah,
If we skip that part, I mean, how can we make any suggestions in anything if we don't
well, and
understand?
I hope that I'm not like saying you can't ask those questions or,
I am.
okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Cause I'm like, you know, I wanna make sure that when they come in and a department, and that's why this agenda is a little bit like that, is I wanted to have this time to prepare and know
Our
what
goals
we're
are gonna
doing.
change throughout the whole day.
They will,
Sure.
but if we kind of are on the same page of when we're listening to a budget, we're looking for, you know, where we see the city is not doing good, where, if that makes sense, Doug. I saw your hand raised, sorry.
That's okay. I agree with both you, Steph, and Brenda, and about guiding the discussion, you know, and at the same time, not limiting it, so to speak. I remember quite clearly, and if I had about 40 hours to listen to all the council meetings from last year, I could pinpoint exactly where the mayor said, there is nothing that we cannot question. We are allowed to question anything.
Yes,
You know, it was quite clear that we were allowed to talk about anything.
John will tell us when we're out of line. John will tell us when we're out of line.
maybe, I might have to kick him.
If not, he's fired.
Okay.
Excellent,
Contract.
excellent.
Pretty tough.
Okay. I'll buy
Alright.
that sailboat and see you guys in a year.
So I thought we had a general idea. Does anybody, like, I mean, I think we kind of understand.
I was just gonna say. You can ask me a lot about what I do in my profession, and I could probably give you more details than you probably ever wanted to know.
Mhm.
But I am not versed in running the water district or
Yeah,
or maintaining city streets or whatever. I need them to teach me what is important to them.
mhm,
And then I'm gonna look at it as, I live here and I'm paying for this.
right,
Do I like what you're telling me?
mhm,
I may not like it, but do I agree with it? Or do I say, have you thought about,
that's exactly, yeah,
But if I
how
don't-
can we?
I spent a while and I looked at this lovely budget for that, okay? And after a little while, I woke myself up and said, this is garbage. I can't, it doesn't mean anything to me because it doesn't speak to me.
Yeah,
Maybe as a financial consultant, it would. But that's not what I do. So if they want input, I gotta understand their business.
So do
Yeah.
you wanna start earlier? I mean, you said next meeting we'll go through the other stuff, but do you wanna, is it?
Earlier than 3 is hard to get.
yeah, I can't do earlier than 3.
No, I meant
Oh.
earlier to bring department heads.
So how long is it? 2 hours?
What's that?
Are the
So,
meetings 2 hours?
It's whatever you want.
Because we could have them come the last half.
Is it, I mean, if we wait too long, then it's gonna be crunch time and you're,
because it looks like there's a 2-week
I just don't know if it makes any sense
in
to.
between. When a budget, I think when a department head presents though, it's a lot easier to see. Don't you agree?
Yes.
I mean, like,
That's what I'm saying, do it sooner
Let's do
than
it
waiting
sooner.
for.
That would be my suggestion.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Do it sooner, and then you have the last 2 or 3 of these meetings to discuss what you've learned, what you've heard,
yes.
what specifics you want. Because last year I felt like we started a little too late.
So did you guys discuss each department right before it was done in council?
No, we just discussed them pretty close to right before, but we just discussed each department or a couple each meeting. But last year, I wish we would have started earlier in the year
Okay.
because,
The
I
last
felt like
part
we were
gets
pushed.
busy.
yeah, we were
So
supposed to,
we
okay, we've got to
do-
hurry and finish these 2 departments and then you got to take some time to make some recommendations and
Okay.
I felt like we were kind of.
So I've got an idea. Next meeting is March 6th and on the 26th. So that puts us 2 weeks ahead of when the city starts to discuss budget highlights, revenues, priorities, and future plans. Maybe we go 2 weeks ahead of the city And we spend the first half hour of the meeting discussing what we learned from the department before the next department comes in and presents. Does that make sense? Am I, so
So you
we'll
wanna
have,
have them come in and then have a review of.
yeah, so they'll come in and give us their budget. We all have 2 weeks to think on it. We come back with, and we spend the first half of the next meeting discussing our recommendations, what we thought about the presentation after looking further into it. And then we'll come up with the recommendations for Chris, and then it's the next week that the council will be discussing it.
Well,
So that gives us 2 weeks
I feel
technically per.
when they come in and they present, my mind is already there.
Mhm.
And I'd rather discuss it right after that.
Well, and
Then
that's,
wait and then come
okay.
back and try to remember what they were talking
so
about.
that's where I had us doing it and then having that discussion, and then it's.
So we
the
don't have
next
to have
week
all
is the
departments
city
at
council.
first. We could have a couple departments come the first hour.
Well, no, I would have, what I want to do is, so this is the city's discussion. So so let's take April 9th, enterprise funds and administration. We would have this department present to us the week before city council, before they present it to city council. So that we're discussing it, going over it at that meeting and giving the recommendations to Chris, who will then take them to the city council
Well,
and.
yeah, yes. At the same time, I think it's you guys are presenting it, not necessarily, I will take whatever we talk about and probably sprinkle it in there. But really, to me, you know, before May 14th,
What form are you looking at? Oh, no, that I've got.
I think it's.
So-
It was just, it was a step at the beginning. Yeah,
Attachment to one of the emails.
Oh, okay, I guess I missed that one.
but to me, the goal is to present a recommendation before the 14th of May. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
I
my
can,
question. Are you gonna have a recommendation every week at council meeting, or are you gonna?
Well, and if we've got one, I'm not, that's why I'm trying to discuss the calendar. I'm not
Yeah.
quite sure, you know, if we're breaking it down in departments, we're gonna have recommendations per department.
I got you now.
So that's why in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so do we follow the city council so that our recommendations are sprinkled into the discussion where they may be more effective while they're discussing that department? Does that make sense? Like,
It'd be more,
rather than at the end,
Okay.
just, here it all is over.
It'll be interesting though. Cause then you gotta quick turn
So-
something so that everybody agrees to the briefing.
Well, that's why I was saying,
Then you have to.
but see, I don't know that it has to be a big presentation because I don't know that we're gonna have like
Okay,
a presentation per department. We may just have a few
You're
suggestions
saying
here
that
and
we're not
there.
gonna hear anything about anybody's budgets until March 26th.
Well, that's when, I don't know. That's what we're discussing. I'm
I
not
thought
saying
we were gonna
we
have
could
them
start
start
it.
explain their process, their budget,
Yes,
not necessarily their new budget, but explain everything so that we're prepared when they submit their budgets and what to look at.
yes. So you want them okay, so the budget process with the city, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to best, so we're about to get into the budget process for the
Right.
city for the 24-25. So each department will bring it to us.
Yes.
You want to know the old one, the old budget?
Well, it would be good to review it
Okay,
so that we're prepared when they bring their new one of what to look for. I mean, I don't wanna have to have to learn their budget and doesn't that?
No,
does that
that's-
make
I
sense?
tell you
I don't
what
know,
we did
that's
last
just
year. They came
that's a
in with
lot.
their budget
yeah,
with, they had the department head had their budget, and then they had the comparison from last year.
Okay.
So at the same time, you saw what last year's budget was, you see what this
Okay,
year's
that's what I
proposed
was
budget
wondering.
is.
yeah.
So that you can see where they go up,
We
where they go
usually-
down.
yeah.
Okay,
Well done.
sorry, I was
Yeah.
confused. Yeah, when they present it to the council, it usually includes this last year's and where they're seeing that their expenses are going up or why they need more money and what
Well,
that
last
would
year
pertain
should be
to.
actuals basically, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Um,
No, cause
I mean, like,
that last year's are this month.
yeah,
And so what
And
you
it's-
get, we have actuals from everything prior
Right,
to,
you have your actuals up to the budget that hasn't occurred yet, or the actuals that haven't occurred yet, right?
yeah, so we can have actuals, but it's like some stuff we pay for in August and some stuff we pay for in June.
Correct.
So it's So the best actuals number we have right now is for fiscal year that ended July or June of 2023. So we have those actuals, but we have kind of an operating number right now.
Yeah.
So it's hard because we're really looking 18 months back at actuals almost always.
Okay.
So,
But usually when a department presents, they're comparing and showing where
I
their
just
increases may
hate-
be.
Waiting clear till March.
No,
Start that
no, that's
process.
fine. So let's
Yeah,
discuss
but
what
we
how
know
we should
it's
do it.
February, so it's not clear till March.
Yeah, we have one
March
meeting
is
in
around the
between
corner.
it, but. So our next meeting
June
is where I
28th.
was gonna have Chris go over the yellow sheets and kind
Okay.
of their budgeting
Perfect.
from the last committee meeting, so that we're understanding kind of.
Okay.
That
makes
he'll,
sense.
he'll be that'll be, we've got one more meeting and presentation where we'll have to put him in charge of that. And understanding kind of how they did it last year, what the yellow sheets look like, what they mean, and then on the 20th. Is when we'll start 1 week ahead of the city council. So we're right in line with how they're discussing. And then if you guys can attend city council, you'll see the department. Presented to the city council and what the city council's thoughts are on it and how that moves forward.
And it may be that the only thing we have as a committee to present to council, because that quick turnaround, a little different than last year, is here are the questions that were raised by the committee, right? Have we looked at this? Is that expenditure really necessary? Does it really cost, does a snowplow really cost that much?
Yeah,
You know, do we need one or do we need 15? Or is there something that council, here are the questions the committee has raised. We don't necessarily have answers to them.
and Chris, if you like that, I mean, I think you as our liaison, that would be great, but I think we'd be really. More effective is if we're going over the department budget before giving you, I don't think we're gonna have a ton of recommendations, but anything we've got, you can bring up. During that discussion with that council
And it's
or
still
with
not-
that
Yeah,
department.
it's still not final until,
Voted on.
yeah, well, the tentative is the 14th of May, and then the final is to be the 22nd, no later than that, so. It's one
Yeah,
of those things that, you know, sooner the better, yeah.
yeah, I mean, our
Well, isn't there-
recommendations injected into the discussion would certainly be a benefit rather than just a presentation right before you. Approve it, then it's like, oh, well,
Isn't there a little bit of negotiation going on between when they first submit it and then you finalize it? Or do they submit it and you just accept it and move on, or?
Well, there's not very much negotiation, because they're given the departments pretty much what.
You've
their
already given them
budget
their
is.
goals then.
And then they have to figure out how to fit it all in.
Okay.
And then they come back, and if there's something that one of the council members says, I don't like that, then they'll discuss it. Otherwise, usually.
or yeah, why is that
Yeah.
this much, or why do you need that?
Typical
There's a
process.
lot of scrubbing that gets done between the department heads. And council that's done with the city administrator and with our finance director. They over the years have been marvelous at sitting down and looking at the departments and saying, yeah, no, that's not gonna work. And, you know, in some years, there've been, before it ever gets to council, you know, as those initial asks come from, as any department does, right? We've got an ask, this is to accomplish what we're supposed to accomplish. These are the things that we would like to have. These are the things we think we need and all of that. There have been years where there have been multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars scrubbed from the budget before it ever gets to council and before mayor makes his presentation on a balanced budget. So oftentimes, well, every year, that's a lot, that scrubbing's done long before it gets to council. And the departments are real good at responding to that leadership from the city administrator and from our finance director. They do a really good job of, what's the word?
I don't know.
Towing the line.
I've watched the budget process for 5 years and it's probably taken me that long to really get it.
You do better than me.
I'm
10
like,
years and I still.
yeah,
don't really get
I
it.
should like, okay, I think we know how this goes, but. So let's take a minute and discuss then what we want to talk about at the next meeting. What questions do we have? What do we need to understand before we start getting them to department? And I've got Chris presenting yellow pages. I don't know what else to say.
I would like to go through a little bit of the budget, just
Okay,
to see what expenses right
We do the white
there.
pages.
would you like, do you see it,
Just a quick,
I missed what you said.
I would like to go quickly review the pages of the budget, just to look at the departments.
Right now?
Well,
no,
we've
we're
got time
talking
to
about
do it,
next,
but
next
month?
Oh, yeah.
meeting.
Kind of have.
Yeah,
So I
Yeah,
can
so,
review budget slash sheets. How they work.
mhm,
that's good.
and then go through the budget. Answer any questions.
There's this lady behind us that.
Yes.
To me.
Do you wanna do that?
The yellow sheets are great because.
You know, I can.
Memberships, and you'll have line 5310, that's memberships and
Mine.
subscriptions.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
do you wanna do the
Break it out.
presentation on the budget then?
This and
Answer any
this,
questions, okay,
this,
the line by line.
to that line.
We had yellow sheets out.
Next
Oh, did
week,
you?
I was thinking maybe we throw in the RDA, just so everyone understands the RDA budget, especially since it's separate and we really won't be
You mean
discussing
CDA?
it, or, oh, I guess it's CDA now, huh? Was RDA, CDA.
It's
now.
still the redevelopment agency, that's the community development area budget.
So even though it's gone, the acronym remains.
Yes.
So that's not really a budget,
But
but
there's not an
real,
RDA now,
Put
it's
it
a
back to
CDA.
what we have to live with.
yes.
I gotta make that note.
But that might be something we could also discuss just as, because that's always discussed in all of the budgets, they always go to the CDA budget and discuss it. We really won't.
What's the CDAs?
Community
Community
development.
development, okay. And we really won't have any say in
And
that, that's
under
already
the
been,
redevelopment agency.
Yes.
but it is a budget that's in there and you'll see it in there and it's discussed, so.
Area.
It's,
Well, I just like to know the terminology.
Sure.
Yeah,
It's
what's
like
the
listening to a
redevelopment,
pilot talk.
redevelopment area? No,
that's the ILS on it.
I haven't heard,
It's got, we're gonna be doing an IFR, sir.
Ooh.
as long as I don't hear head down, stay down, brace, 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 I'm happy.
Then stay off my flight, sir.
Do your thing.
You gotta have a mouthpiece in when I'm landing.
Okay.
So one thing that might be helpful is we could bring in a budget for a department that has a litany or just a wide variety of stuff. And we could start explaining, hey, when we say training, this is the stuff we're talking about. And that differs from professional services in this way. That might be a good starting point for next time to, because then if you can understand kind of how we group things, most departments have the same last three digits for their travel and training. It's this, Jamie can tell you the code. I can't tell you the code number. But like office supplies is all the last three digits.
Right.
The first four digits are different because that designates a department, but the last three are all the same. And that's just how we code it. But that might be helpful because then you can see, then as you go back to
Then we
the
know
budget
what we're-
document, you can say, oh, look, office supplies is not, it's like small equipment is printers and keyboards and computers, where office supplies is pens and papers and stuff that you'd say, oh, that makes a lot of sense, but doesn't always translate to most people's budgets. So we could start with that and we could,
okay,
we
I
could
was
pick,
like, do you wanna do that? Do you wanna,
yeah, sure.
I mean,
Either that or if you've got a chart of accounts that shows that.
Well,
It is our turn.
so on the budget, you saw it gives you that like, hey, this is miscellaneous.
mhm,
And
Yeah.
we can just, I think we can provide the color and the detail that says, hey, this is the things that will fall into that.
Okay.
And then it will allow, a couple of years ago when COVID hit and we thought budget was gonna be tight, we went in and we crunched down our training budgets and said, okay, who has to be trained as opposed to who is it good we train? Yeah. And so we've done some things like, but so I'll have Jamie tell me the right budget. I'm not sure police, because police is kind of specific. But maybe administration, or I don't know, we'll find
office administration.
a budget that has kind of a wide range of everything, and maybe it's water, because water operates very similar to all the other departments. And so maybe that's one we'll look at.
How many departments do you have then?
Well, depends on how you cut it.
I know that, yeah. I know
Yeah,
that-
so like in this building, there's 6 different departments.
Okay.
But we usually think of it as in 4 groups. So we have this building, we kind of have the Parks and Rec component, we have police, and then we have Public Works. But like Public Works is 6 different departments too, 7 different departments. And so really And so, but I think maybe we'll look at the water budget, because it has a good range of topics, and we can talk about everything from just maintenance and professional services to everything else.
And that makes a good point. I just thought about that. You said talking about departments. There's like everything. You have council, you have judicial,
Mhm.
which, I mean, do you want to just take everything or do you want to take? Because some of the council stuff is kind of like, oh. I don't know. You want to take the big ones, small, all of them? Because some of them are really small. I mean, that's.
It's up to
'cause you were talking
you,
about
like,
scope.
this is what we have,
And
next
It's-
week is
it's-
gonna be,
It's more than, there's a lot. See the yellow sheets. It's a thick book.
So you've got an organ, I guess I would call it an organization, which would be your administration, and then do you have
Because if you look
underneath administration?
Because if you look at the budget, every single one of those that's delineated is a whole topic in the department and has a yellow sheet associated.
So, and you
Right.
also have notes that Chris, that you passed out, meeting minutes and video from when the department was presented to council a couple weeks. What was it, in late January?
Yep.
So
I
I don't know
couldn't
if
see
you
any
have
video
to
on
see those, because we hit on the line items of what each.
And that's kind of what I gave that out because that was an
Right.
awesome link.
Right,
So you can go to it as a reference sheet, still did myself, to go, yeah, so.
yeah, so, I mean, we have a lot of information out there, I guess it's just.
So you've got
and which one we wanna
You did
talk about and how.
An email with the URL for that YouTube video to go watch when the departments presented to council in January.
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah, I
having to
can.
just do a search.
What
and
was
find-
the date
Date was
too?
this. So that was a working session? No.
Oh, so we're supposed to go into YouTube to find that stuff.
Yeah, it's all saved on YouTube.
So there, Northampton,
I can just, I can even just message you a link real
Yeah,
quick that
that
I
would
just
work.
open it. Okay. What date in January was it?
Well, I don't
Actually,
typically go searching for city council meetings.
I
when
can
go
send it to you as
YouTube.
well. Yeah,
But it's,
you know.
there's a link right on there,
I know.
so you.
It's usually when I'm trying to fix something, how do I?
That's all you have to do.
I've not been able to get the links on the minutes to actual hyperlink.
Yeah,
You can
that's
sit
it.
there
It's a hit and miss.
and I haven't been able to get them to actually activate. They're blue, but they're not.
But they're not. Because they're copies, they're pictures, they're not.
Yeah, even when you go into the minutes, though, I've not been able to get the hyperlink to the YouTube to. I'll bring that up in the next council meeting.
So the first part of the budget is all of your revenue, right? Up here?
Say it
Yes,
one more
it
time.
should say it's all part of your revenue.
Yeah.
And then you start with council.
Yep.
Judicial. Recorder, they're all the departments.
Mhm.
Administrative, human resources. And I'm guessing how many of those departments are within here?
in the building?
Which ones are in the building here?
Well, so if so there's council.
Okay.
Recorder.
Finance.
Administration. Finance.
Okay.
Planning. Building. We don't have an emergency manager one, but technically that's a little sub. Budget. And. HR, and then we've even started an IT budget.
You have judicial in here too, then?
They're in the public safety building.
Oh, okay.
They technically answer to the city attorney, which is me. And so they kind of are, but they're in a different building.
All right, so. The next meeting we'll be talking, we'll have Chris presenting on the yellow pages.
Me?
I just have that.
John's.
No, John's gonna give you present a budget and a breakdown of one of the budgets. And then, Phil, do you want to do RDA or CDA? Do
Yeah.
a little presentation
Yeah.
on that and what
Yeah.
that's about?
That's.
Okay. Is there anything else anybody can think of to add to that? This is gonna be where we're gonna try to get answers or questions answered before we start having department heads presenting.
So you have all your departments here. I'm just going through this to ask questions.
No,
well.
you're
That's-
totally
that's
fine. We
okay.
have time today. And in fact, that's why at the beginning of this, I wrote say questions and answers.
So I've gone through and I can see all the departments now, and then it goes into page 14. Where it has all these other charity days. These are all debt service funds. Are these additional revenues?
So everything, the revenues are before you hit council,
Yes.
and everything else after that is an expense.
Okay, so now I'm looking at the debt service fund, which talks contributions and transfers, expenditures, charity days,
Mhm.
Parks and
transfers in, transferring in, expenditures. I understand transfers. You probably got a department transfers from one department to another.
And when you get to the aquatic center and the utility funds, you'll start seeing some revenues in the utility funds and their aquatic center again.
I just
Like a
meant
department,
to-
though. You call it a fund, but it's really its own department, like the aquatic center,
Correct.
right? Okay. And then they have their own revenue and then you have their expenses.
Yep.
Okay. Mhm. Does that make sense to you guys?
Mhm.
Get this right down in 10 minutes, maybe not, but,
you just stare at it.
I'm just wanting to make sure we understand all this.
Yeah, I have something, John,
Yeah.
as I recall, and I'm putting this on the table because I think it was really good advice. Last year, John, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you recommended that we look at, I forget if it was programs or there was something, you know, because the little tiny things like bring your own water bottle, maybe not worth talking about. And then the big, huge things were salaries, you know, the biggest part of the budget, but we're really not, that's not a fruitful field to plow, it's salaries. But the middle of the road, what was the term you used, John? Was it programs?
I did call them programs, and it goes to what Stephanie put on the agenda, right? What are we doing? What should we be doing? What are we doing that we shouldn't be? But, and the hard thing about that is that those discussions are inherently sensitive, because anytime we're talking about cutting a program, let's say if North Ogden City was talking about eliminating our fire department, we don't have one, so that's why we can use that as an example. Then it dramatically impacts the lives of the people in that department. And so if we start talking about senior center or aquatic center and recreation and even just police and things, it ends up being a sensitive topic, but and I'm not going to advocate for eliminating something specifically, but if you eliminated the police department, you eliminate the salaries and you eliminate all these things. And just as a reminder, I don't think we should eliminate the police department. But that's the kind of stuff where if you go program level, then there's a lot of expenses under there that also come out of it too.
So was the word you used, was it projects? More questions that you suggested we kind of focus on? I forget exactly what term you used, but it was helpful.
I don't know, like lately I've been calling it programs. You know, if we stopped offering football, recreational football, then that's a savings of time and equipment and all sorts of things. But that's kind of the thought, that's where there can be a lot of impact and likely where if the group is after significant savings, that's the most likely place to find it is looking at what stuff is the city doing that we shouldn't be. And that could fall into two categories, either outsourcing that. A good example is the city several years ago looked at outsourcing all of our parks maintenance. Ultimately, the council at the time decided that it was worth the extra $20,000-ish, if I remember about, to have it in-house and have all the control.
Yes.
As opposed to outsourcing it for basically 6 months of the year. And then in the winter months, we lost all those full-time people, and it ended up not seeing the savings that we felt like, or the council felt like it was worth. So.
But again, It's one of those things that if this committee decides they want to recommend, they can.
Yep.
And then it's up to the council to decide what they want to do with it.
And to Brenda's point, just because the question's been asked, doesn't mean the answer hasn't changed in that I mean, I guess that was probably 10 years ago, right? I mean, the whole world has changed in the past 10 years. And if the conversation about mowing lawns wants to come up again by this group, that's the program level stuff that the council ultimately makes the decision on, but it's also the thing that's the hardest thing for the city to do because you're dealing with individual lives.
The district, special services, Harrisville, doesn't
Yeah, they get all of them.
they have their own board, their own budget.
And they charge their own property tax.
Yeah. I saw that.
They get as much from us as the city does. For most houses.
Yep.
Any other questions or thoughts about next meeting?
You're doing a great job.
Yeah, right, I'm a little bit like,
No, you're doing fantastic.
thanks. Very good. I guess the other thought though that I did have is if, Brenda, do you and Doug, last time, did you guys take and break down and put someone over each department, or you guys just kind of took it
We
all
knew
on?
what department was coming, and so we would look at
Just
those
all
yellow
of
pages, and when we came to the meeting, if we had any questions, we would ask during that department.
As a group, we didn't divide.
Okay,
That idea was suggested, we didn't divide up and say, Bill, your job is Parks and
Okay.
Recreation.
that was just a thought I had, and I couldn't remember if you guys had done it or not, but I think just all of us coming in prepared
We
for
discussed
each.
it, and we had an inner vote on it, and it was decided not, because I might have as many questions on the swimming pool as I have on the roads. And
Yeah,
I
and
don't want
I.
to be limited, so.
And
that
I
was
guess
good.
I guess in my head, as I think it through, it's like, what are you gonna do, meet with them before they meet with us? It doesn't make
Now, that
sense. So we'll
was
all
the
just,
last year,
Yeah.
and that's just not
no,
possible.
we'll just meet
Yeah.
together. So
I don't
we're still really 2 weeks ahead of before, with next meeting, before the city starts discussing budgets. Their first one is March 26th, and that'll just be a review. So I say we just meet next week or in 2 weeks on the 6th, based on what we've discussed, and we can decide how we want to move forward at that point. If we want to start having the departments coming in, and that'll put us 2 weeks ahead of the city discussion, so.
Well,
that'll
and
give
even
us-
if we do review the yellow sheets and the budget, we may have some thoughts pop up
Yes.
that we can be prepared to ask when
And
they come
that's,
in.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying, so that gives us still a little cushion room before the city, we can take the next meeting to continue learning if we need to, or we can say, you know what, let's go ahead and have the first department come in and do their presentation, in the next 2 weeks, if we're feeling good, and that'll just put us 2 weeks ahead, so that'll get us 2 weeks per department before it goes to city council.
So,
A suggestion, maybe in the meeting that, where the yellow sheets are being presented, maybe we could have our finance director take a half hour and train us on anything she sees that we're lacking in.
don't,
How she
that's
loves
scary.
She puts that back
How she
with a
loves
big
the
grin on
line
her
art.
face.
You're very welcome.
Do you wanna do two, do you wanna schedule? Because if somebody, hey, I'm gonna be off this date, you just wanna go meeting to meeting, picking the 6th and then picking the 20th, or do you wanna plan it out?
I think we should plan it out, but I don't want to yet because we still have a little cushion room and I don't want us to meet next week and still be left with questions and jump to a department presentation. We still have a little bit of cushion room.
So 6th is the next,
The 6th will be the next meeting, and I think, what we've discussed,
probably the 20th would be the next meeting after
the
that.
next one, yes, where's my calendar? Yes, the next meeting would be the 20th, and the city will we'll start their discussion on the 26th.
We never went to see the,
We tried once.
we tried once and it's just.
Yeah, I don't think they could do single weeks.
No, that was just trying to.
Okay, so the 20th, we will decide if we want to discuss, if we have more questions, if we have more that we need to do as far as learning goes and understanding of the budget process before we move forward. Or on the sixth, excuse me, I'm sorry.
I said you're too late if you wait. till
Yeah.
the 20th.
No, so then on the 20th, so on the 6th, we'll decide if we have some more, how we want to approach the 20th. Because the first discussion the city council will have is on the 26th, which will be the following Tuesday. And that is budget highlights, revenues, priorities, and future plan. And so if we're going to start following the city discussion, we're going to want that presented to us on the 20th. And so that's why I say the next meeting, we'll kind of just make sure everyone understands, and because that's not a huge department presentation, so we'll be able to add, if we have more questions to add in there, or more concerns, more learning that we need to do.
Well, and the revenue information from that will be very helpful as
Yeah.
we look at, because
Just push, Sandy, just.
revenues are really the driving force, right? Without revenues, we don't have expenditures.
So who would be the presenter here of this?
That Jamie?
We'd have Jamie.
What?
The first discussion for city council, budget highlights, revenues, priorities, and future plan.
That's you.
So tentatively, we're looking at having that discussion on March 20th, the week before city council.
I am not gonna commit to
That's fair.
that.
So,
Um,
so Chris, this is why I wasn't quite sure about moving, because that's the first discussion, but then we'll decide for sure. Enterprise funds will come right before.
What's your timeline? Budget.
What's my timeline?
Yeah, I mean, is there a time that?
So my
department heads-
timeline is what's on that.
No, when the department heads have to submit their yellow sheets, et cetera, et cetera.
So my timeline is what's on that schedule. I don't know anything more if they don't have a yellow sheet ready.
So, but if they don't have a yellow sheet ready by the time that schedule, then they're in
I'm hoping
trouble.
that they'll have it done. I'm assuming they will, but I just go with what last year's numbers are.
So how this would fall, yeah, is we would be the Wednesday before the Tuesday they present, so it would be just a little less than a
Well,
week.
I mean, if nothing else, we have yellow sheets from last year, and that's something
Yeah.
that we can.
Well, and I think they'd be able
So
to present.
I want everybody to keep in mind, you know, John touched on, a minute ago. We're trying to decide in February right now what we're gonna do next June. So it's really hard to absolutely get 100% of the information by March 26th. So that's why, like, I'm really non-committal, so. Right now, like, I don't even know if I have a department back right now. Everybody is scrambling, working on their departments. So that's why March 26th is, yeah, we'll have a general discussion about revenues.
Yeah,
And from what we talk about on March 20th, could totally change to March 26th. And then so what typically happens is when you start throwing out numbers, people start to cling to those numbers. And so it's hard to change minds after that happens. And once again, that's why I'm non-committal. So on March 26th is when we go to council, and then hopefully in April, when the department heads are supposed to present to council, they've got most of their budgets done. So those yellow sheets are more guidelines than they are set in stone.
I
But
think
it still gives us an idea.
Yeah, I
of what's
think I
in there.
understand that. Yeah.
The yellow sheets are also going to match up what's in that budget. It's just going to be a little bit more detail of what office supplies they're buying.
Yeah, and see, I'm not worried about that. Yeah,
Whether it's a printer or a new computer, those kinds of things.
yeah, and I don't know that we're worried about that. I think just generally overview of like, this is where our budget goes to, this is, you know, this percent goes to here, this amount goes to here, this is, and we'll be able to go from there, you know, like we see an increase here for this reason this year. By explaining it to how you guys see it at maybe. Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about a printer or a computer.
But you don't want to know how many stamps you're buying.
No,
But how that differs is, so like in my finance budget, I'm not buying a computer next year, so you're gonna see a $1,500 decrease.
yeah,
And it's gonna show 100% decrease, and maybe that's a 9%, and it might go, oh my gosh, but you don't realize it was because I didn't need to buy a printer or a computer.
okay,
But you're saying that you know, you don't care about a printer or a computer, but when you see that number jump.
No,
it's like,
yeah,
oh,
no, I know what you're saying, yeah.
understand
Next year when you
what
want to
those
spend
line items are.
3,500, then.
Right.
Won't that be on the yellow?
It should be, yeah.
So
It
it
should
should,
be.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then again, this year, I needed to buy a computer, we put in 1,500 and it actually ended up being 25. I didn't know that when I budgeted this time last year, then I needed.
You know, yeah.
But you also all need to know that Jamie knows how to do this. And if she needs to take that extra $1,000 from something,
Right.
she knows how to do it and it's there.
Yeah.
She's not, what would they call, stealing from.
Robbie.
your-
Well, that's what I said, I'm not worried about nickel and diming you, I just. Yeah, I think.
I think
Bill?
one of the things, Jamie, that is valuable for all of us to understand is sometimes, I know even sitting on council, we'll look at something and it's like, oh, this line is a new $140,000 line. And it's a 100% increase. Well, what that is it's been removed. What we don't realize, you caught us on this many times, helped us understand that we're getting greater detail. We're moving this line from somewhere else in the budget that was buried under this over here so that it's more transparent.
Mhm.
That line's been reduced by 140. This line's gone up by 140. So the two cancel each other out. But as you go running through, you can look at this and go, oh my gosh, this is a brand new line and there's an extra 140 grand. Where did that come from?
Yeah,
That's where
And
your notes should come in and explain that so people understand.
yeah.
You know, not everybody understands that, and if I'm an outsider and coming in, you should be able to read those notes and say,
mhm,
And Jamie, especially in the staff reports and stuff, has typically done that. Good example is HR used to be under the admin department, and a couple of years ago, we broke it out and it became a whole new, and so it looked like, hey,
Yeah.
here's $100,000 showing up. And you know, it just, and so in her staff reports and notes and in those conversations, you say, okay, this is where it's coming from.
so the notes are good to have.
all right. So I think ultimately we would like to plan it out, but I think we're jumping the gun and we'll do that next week if that's, or next meeting if that's okay with everybody. We'll plan forward based on how comfortable we feel with what was presented and our understanding at that point.
March 6th at the same time, is that what we're doing?
Can I
Yes.
finish up a suggestion?
Yes.
For city council this next Tuesday, I believe.
Mhm.
I don't know if Chris wants to just talk to the mayor, if he wants to bring it up with the council. See if they have some specific ideas or direction they want this committee to go. Or if they say, Chris, it's your committee, do what you want. That would be up to you, how you want to bring it up or not. But
All of the above. I'll probably email people and probably that one there.
because I know the direction of our meeting last year, was very open because it was brand new. So we might want to see if they want more detail.
I think that'd be great. I would like to. Yeah. All right. So while we're setting up the agenda, I'm just gonna see if we have anybody who wants to. Well, I guess I'll ask for who wants to do a thought. And pledge next time.
Why do you keep looking at me? Everybody.
Like, sorry, eye contact with you afterwards, it's like,
Chris. He's so good at that.
Sure.
I know.
that'd be great. All right, do we, anything else from anybody?
Next.
Doug, got a question?
I have a question, perhaps just clarifying to me, but did this group arrive at a clear, understood decision of whether you're gonna replace one of the gone numbers or not?
Not my understanding. I, Brenda, would be.
So is that decision final?
Yeah.
Does everybody agree that
I think we're fine.
no additional people are going to be roped into the committee?
I thought it was Brenda.
I thought it was
That's
too.
what I understood as well. Otherwise I would have kept my mouth shut.
That's something about too.
So that's the decision as Brenda is the new
Yes,
subcommittee member,
yes.
understood.
And
And I remain
decline.
simply what was the word? advisor.
Consultant.
A consultant.
Thank you.
I have to make, I have to like combine my notes because I just write all over everything. I go, adjourn.
Sure.
Adjourn.
Second.
We good? Thank you, everybody.
Awesome, thank you.